I'm curious. Do you remember how many? First of all, it's fascinating to hear you talk about it. I've had a few Delta guys on the show over the years, and to have the privilege of sitting down with one of the original guys is just humbling to say the least. So I just want to mention that, but also, do you recall how many guys were in your selection versus how many made it total? I know the EOD guys, it was 4 and 2, but do you remember the whole group
I
number?
believe it could have been between 140 to 160 that started my selection assessment, and only 10 of us finished.
Wow, man, that's
We,
awesome.
we had one selection assessment, only two people finished.
Jeez. At the time, did it feel and seem as challenging as it sounds when you were going through it, being such a new thing? Obviously, at this point, everybody who goes there has some idea, has a pretty good idea of the history and what they're getting themselves into, what the job is. With this being so
Hmm.
groundbreaking, like was it did that register with you as you're going through it? Kind of how groundbreaking it was?
Yeah, well, it was new to me. I'd never done anything like that before. And Yeah, so it was that was new. And of course, now, basically, Special Forces Q course is kind of like a modification of our course. They kind of took what we did, not to the extent of what we did, but that's basically the SF, from my understanding, the SFQ course.
But I guess at the time going through it, even though it was something that you'd never experienced, did you find it to be, unquestionably the most challenging thing you'd ever gone through?
Yeah, it was. It was. So yeah, you don't know that day. You don't know how what the length, how many, what kilometers you were going to do that day. You don't know how many RV points, and you could quit anytime. When you got to an RV point, you could say, "I quit," and the guy will then say, "Okay, take your rucksack, go over there and set. You're done." And then you go back to Fort Bragg and process out. Uh, no harassment, even quitting. I mentioned one time I talked to a guy who ran an RV point, and when at the end of the day, everybody ended up at his RV point, and that's where there were two trucks at his RV point, and so that's where the whole people that were doing the course ended up. And he said to the people that were there that finished that day, he says, "This truck here is going back to Fort Bragg. This truck here is going back to camp," and pointed it out to this group of people. And every single one of them got into the truck to go back to Fort Bragg. And he's like, "Boy, did I say this wrong?" He says, "Guys, I might have got this wrong, but this truck's going back to Bragg. This one's supposed to go back to camp." They all shook their head. "Yep, we know." The whole group at his station quit.
Wow, man, was
It
quitting
was
ever something that you considered?
no, no, no. I went through the operator training course. I was motivated to do that. Now, I had, you could buy a lot, you could bring a lot of stuff in with you. I had bags of caramels, and I had my pockets filled with caramels. And I would be throughout the day, I'd be eating these caramels because they won't melt. And then you go over this stuff. It's the terrain, like some of the terrain was second growth forests that like were in Uwari, and it was full of vines and briar bushes. Uh, just terrible terrain. Sometimes you could not see 10 feet in front of you, so you had to have that compass right there, staying on track to be able to hit that RV point. So we use land nav as a tool as a tool. The other thing is that we had a 5 event PT test that you have to pass, and one of the events is a 100-meter swim. You have to be able to, with your uniform on and with boots on, you have to swim 100 meters. This is before you go to selection and assessment. And the reason for that is that you have to do a lot of river crossings. And we did have one death in selection, a drowning death in selection and assessment. So it was very important that doing all these river crossings that we know that people can swim. So you have that swim test. It's not timed, but you just got to be able to swim 100 meters with fatigues and boots on.
Yeah.
They actually at one time they wanted us to drop or reduce that swim test, and mainly because they felt that eliminated a lot of people that people there that are not good swimmers, groups of people that aren't groups, that it's a discriminatory. But we had it in there for safety, and so we never changed our standards. Selection assessment, as far as I know, has been the same throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. I'm curious. I mean, it's maybe a silly question, but at that time, being so groundbreaking, at least for the U.S. military, was there any concept in your mind as you're going through it in the early days that Delta would turn into such a special and elite unit that it has become today?
Well, I knew it was going to be special. It was unique. Colonel Beckwith, that was his vision, and he was the right person at the right time to do that. We had, you're talking about, the 1970s. You're talking about aircraft hijacking. All this stuff was going on in the world, and first of all, we had an unclassified mission, and our unclassified mission was POW rescue. That was one of the things that we trained for. It was based on Sante, the camp in North Vietnam where Americans were being held, called Sante. That was in the fall of 1970 when they tried to attempt to rescue the Americans held in North Vietnam outside of Hanoi, southeast of Hanoi. That's where Sante was. And so they had to train up a group of Americans to do the raid on the camp. They also had all the aircraft and everything like that. It took a period of time to train everybody up to implement the raid. And of course, if you're familiar with the Sante raid, you know that the camp was empty. There was no Americans at the camp.
Yeah.
Is that something, Mike, you know about?
I don't know. No, I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. Well, no Americans were at the camp when they went in there. Beckwith's vision was that we would have a force that could do POW rescue or any kind of prison rescue, that we would have this force. And a lot of our early missions in Delta were aimed at prisons. Like Grenada, Richmond Hill Prison. I was on the Grenada operation to rescue the political prisoners at Richmond Hill. During Operation Just Cause, Panama, the mission there was to rescue Kurt Muse, who was being held there in the prison. So, and then, of course, after the Iran hostage rescue mission, the American hostages were moved to different prisons. So that was kind of our forte. Now, Sante, Interesting fact about Sante is uh, there's several documentaries. There are several books on Sante, but they're all from the American perspective, and none of them have from the Vietnamese perspective. And there's speculations why the Americans were moved out of the prison camp in Sante. Speculations was the monsoons flooded the camp. Well, monsoons happen every year. The camp floods every year. It wasn't the monsoons. The other thing is that maybe the North Vietnamese got wind of some kind of rescue attempt was going to be made. But I have a friend who is Vietnamese. He was a Vietnamese refuge, and he worked for Coca. Then after he came to the United States, he worked for Coca-Cola, and he was the Coca-Cola representative in Vietnam post Vietnam.
Wow.
And he got acquainted with all the old generals, North Vietnamese generals, and all of the political people in North Vietnam. And he told me the real reason why, and this hasn't been written or recorded or anything, the real reason why that there was no Americans at the Sante camp. The Soviets were monitoring all air traffic over North Vietnam. The Soviets were. And the Soviets noticed an uptake of U-2 and SR-71 flights over Sante. About 12 kilometers from Sante, the Soviets were building for the North Vietnamese a underground command post. Around Hanoi, there are all these underground bunkers around Hanoi. Today, you can go to Vietnam and tour through them. This one was going to be the big command post, and it was just not very far from Sante. Soviet engineers were building this for the North Vietnamese. What the North Vietnamese were afraid of is all these flights that the prison was attracting attention from these, that we would discover this underground bunker complex that's being built. And that's why they moved the prisoners, so that it would take attention off, that we wouldn't accidentally discover this thing. When Ho Chi Minh died, he laid in state in this underground bunker. It's called K9. So this friend of mine, contact I have, has told me all this kind of stuff. So about
That's fascinating.
Sante. It is fascinating.
Yeah. That's incredible.
So
I appreciate you sharing it.
yeah. So anyway, that's what we were mainly designed for. That was our unclassified mission, POW rescue.
And then the classified mission, is it the obvious counterterrorism mission that now is less classified, if that's a thing?
Yeah. It's probably less classified.
Yeah. I'm curious, what was your impression of Colonel Beckwith when you first met him?
He is an amazing person. Actually, he was wounded. In Vietnam, he was part of Mike Force in Vietnam. He actually took a 50 cal 12.7 millimeter round in his stomach. And so,
I don't know how you survive that.
No, I don't know how you survive that either. And he's just an amazing person. Very gruff, speaks his mind. I said he was the right person for the right job. There was a lot of people. He had support in the Pentagon and stuff, but he also had his enemies out there. And I liked him a lot. I'm still in contact with one of his daughters, and Connie, and at Fort Bragg. Have you ever been to Fort Bragg?
I have. Yep.
Yeah, where McKellar's Lodge.
Yeah.
It's yeah. Well, they renamed it.
I didn't know that.
It's the Shoemaker and Beckwith Lodge,
Oh, that's cool.
and McKellar's Road is the Shoemaker and Beckwith Road now.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
when they renamed McKellar's Lodge, they had a dedication for it. It's named after General Shoemaker, uh, and he was my B Squadron commander when I was in the unit. Then he became general, and he was Army Chief of Staff. Um, so they named it after Beckwith and stuff. So when they had the dedication, um, they Connie was going to be there, his daughter, but they wanted to write up Colonel Beckwith's bio. So Connie ran by Colonel Beckwith's bio by me because I have his remembrance site on Army Together We Serve,
Hmm.
and and get corrected all his medals and stuff like that in the write up on that. So I worked with her on making sure it's correct. Um, and if you look up Colonel Beckwith on Wikipedia or several different things, it says he has the Distinguished Service Cross. And he never was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, but Wikipedia has it. When he went inducted Ranger Hall of Fame, they had it. A lot of things on the internet says he had it. He has the Distinguished Flying Cross. So I think what happened is people got that mixed up. So Wikipedia, Wikipedia is a good source of information, but it's I can
Take it with a
tell
grain
you
of
there's a
salt.
lot of inaccuracies in
Yeah.
Wikipedia. And one of them is his medals, and we got that
Yeah.
straight because I have a copy of his DD 214. So yeah, I liked him. What happened in Iran, the Operation Eagle Claw and stuff like that, and we had to abandon the rescue attempt. That haunted him, I believe. After that, they set up, they had the Holloway Commission investigated what went wrong in Iran, and that's when Joint Special Operations Command was created. Out of the ashes of Sante, basically, Delta was created. Out of the ashes of the Iran hostage rescue mission, JSOC, Joint Special Operations, was created. Out of the ashes of Operation Urgent Fury in Grenada, U.S. SOCOM was created. So, each of these things we've learned in special operations, we've learned from our mistakes and doing better.
Yeah.
And
It would be nice to see the U.S. government apply that same logic. Unfortunately, they don't.
yeah, I visited Colonel Beckwith once when he was retired, and he was in Austin, Texas. And so at this time in the unit, I was the RN research and development. I became the research and development sergeant major for the unit. And so he had a guy down there that was doing muzzle compensators, for 45s. And he wanted us to go and check it out. So I went down there, took an armor with me. We checked out these muzzle compensators and stuff like that. So spent some time with Colonel Beckwith in retirement. In his house, I went to this one room he had in his house. This whole room was like a gun vault. I mean, I go in there. There are all these guns and weapons and everything. Things, a lot of them were given to him. Like the Texas, he had this fancy revolver from the Texas Cattlemen's Association. Yeah, it was amazing.
Wow.
So,
That's it's just it's incredible to be able to talk to somebody who knew him that well and have those experiences.